Hey, good morning. Let me see. I can unmute you on my end. Good morning.
Oh, hi. You can see me okay?
Yep, can see you fine. Thanks so much.
Perfect. Okay. Thank
How are
you.
you?
I'm good. Busy week, busy time.
Yeah,
How are you
yeah,
doing?
I'm okay. Yeah. Will be
Good.
good to have a good discussion and be done with this meeting.
As always.
All right.
See you soon. Bye.
Good morning, DOC. We could just test you all out on video. Oh, see you. I see you now.
Can you hear us?
Can hear you.
Cool.
Oh, Stephen Kaiser in the conference room.
In the flesh.
How about that? All right. Thank you.
All right.
Morning, Jennifer. Hey there. How are you? Sounds good. We can't hear you. I don't. Do you want to test it?
Good to
Oh,
see
there we
you.
go. Good to see
Good
you
to
too.
see you.
Cool. There's people in the room. We're live.
Okay, good morning, everybody. And we're waiting for board members?
We're waiting for you are the first arrival.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Bobby.
Morning, Ben.
Hey there. So you can hear you. We can see you.
Great. Hi, Jennifer.
Good morning.
Morning, Stanley.
Stan.
Good morning, Stanley. Good morning, Bobby.
Good morning, Jennifer.
Good morning, James.
Hey, good morning, Ben. How you doing?
Good. You're on with the rest of the board members. Yep.
Good morning, James.
Yep, good
Good morning,
morning.
everybody.
Morning, James.
Good morning, Bobby.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Looking at the screen and hearing James's voice, we have 4. We will be at quorum when we have 6. And we can begin the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we may be at quorum at, is it 5?
Yes, I think 5.
5, and then
Yeah, you
6
just
for a
need
vote. Yes, thank you.
Morning.
Morning, Meg.
Morning, man.
I want to let those who have gathered from the public know that we will begin shortly. I apologize for the delay. We are waiting for at least one more board member to join us. And if I may ask Meg and Bennett, if you would just reach out to the board members who are not.
Yeah.
I'm helping Jackie get on right now.
Okay, thank you. Just confirming that we are still waiting for another.
Yeah,
Okay.
Bennett's helping Jackie troubleshoot, and we just resent the link to the other board members. Marco should be joining right now.
Felipe was just on, but I think, oh, here we go. And Steve's trying to get on right now, so.
Hey, Felipe. And here's Marco.
Hey, sorry for my lateness.
No worries. Morning.
Morning.
Hi, good morning. All right.
Hey, Jim, how's it going?
Good to hear your voice, and good to see Felipe. It's going. We all know that it's going, and in some ways we should be thankful for that. So we have several board members. We have enough board members to begin the meeting, and so I am going to officially call to order the May 11th New York City Board of Correction public meeting. It is now in session. Our scheduled business will start by voting on the draft March 9th and March 17th, 2021 board meeting minutes, which board members have already received. Will a board member move for a vote to approve the March 9th and March 17th, 2021 meetings?
Move to approve.
Thank you. May I have a second of the motion?
Second.
Are there any edits to be made? Hearing none, I'm going to ask for a vote to approve the March 9th and March 17th, 2021 minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And all?
Aye.
Okay. Good deal. Hearing all in favor, I am now declaring that the March 9th and March 17th, 2021 board meeting minutes are approved. Good deal. I just want to, for the record, note that in attendance at this board meeting are Vice Chair Stanley Richards, Board Member Felipe Franco, Board Member Marco Carrion, Board Member Robert Cohen, and Board Member Jacqueline Sherman.
And I believe James is on the phone.
And James, I'm sorry,
Perino.
Board
Yeah,
Member James Perino. Forgive me, James. Thank you for being here.
No problem. I'm here.
Good deal. Good deal. So several of us this morning awoke to the news that Department of Correction Commissioner Brand has announced that she will be stepping down from her post as the commissioner at the end of this month. I want to publicly express my appreciation to the commissioner for her service. She has led the department in very challenging times. I should just begin by saying that she came to the department at a very challenging time. And so I first want to just acknowledge that many people do not step into, don't walk willingly into fire. And she did, and she needs to be, I believe she needs to be commended and appreciated for that. It is hard work running the jail system, and running New York City jails can be a challenge every day. And so I first want to thank her for stepping into the role. And then I just want to acknowledge that there have been difficulties along the way. There have been challenges at every turn. And it's not an easy job. There have been moments when the board has challenged, and what I do want her to know is that I have respected her for her desire to lead and her commitment to the jail system here in New York City, and always trying to strike that right balance. We may not have always agreed, but I do believe that she was dedicated to the task and committed to it. And I want to especially thank her for her leadership during the the height of the COVID pandemic. Many of us on the board, advocates, and people across the city were very much concerned about how the New York City jail system would fare in the midst of COVID, just seeing what was happening in the city at large, seeing what was happening around the nation, and seeing what was happening in jails throughout the nation. And so, I believe that she stayed, vigilant, if you will, in working to address and keep COVID, the spread of COVID and the infection rate at a minimum. There were some challenges along the way, but I do believe that we fared even sadly with several losses that none of us would have liked to have seen, as was the case around the nation in non-jail facilities. Even with that, I do believe that she and her team, she led her team to try to manage the breakout, the infection rate as best as she could in the spread, and is to be commended for that. So I want you to know that on behalf of the board, Commissioner Brand, we appreciate your service to the jails and to the city, and we wish you well as you move on from New York City. Thank you very much. Last week was National Corrections Officers Week and Employees Appreciation Week. National Correction Officers and Employees Appreciation Week. We appreciate the work and the dedication of the correction officers and all other jail staff. And just as I've said about the commissioner, the role of the commissioner, we know how hard this work is, and we want you to know that we appreciate you for showing up, even with all of the uncertainties that pervade the jail system. The board's work is to support all those who pass through the doors of our city's jails, and we want to thank you and the staff, all of the staff, for the service to the city of New York. Today, the board's going to take up a number of critical issues. We will not be voting on the restrictive housing rule at today's meeting. We will not be taking a final vote. That said, the board has submitted just yesterday a revised rule to the law department for review and certification. We are working with the law department to address any issues prior to certification. After the law department certifies the rule, we will publish it again, and the board will hold a vote to adopt the final rule. We are planning to do that before the June meeting. So please, public, be on the lookout. Our aim is to finalize the rule and adopt it before the next scheduled public meeting. The board did receive critical feedback from the public through 2 public hearings, voicemails, and written comment. In total, we heard from nearly 150 people, including those with lived experience, family members of persons with lived experience, Department of Corrections staff, advocates, attorneys, elected officials, and agencies. We appreciate the public's expertise and feedback that has moved us closer to a final rule that meets the goals we all share: safety, support, accountability, and transparency. Your work has pushed us to do more throughout this process, and we thank you for it. This rule will change the way the department responds to violence in the jails. It ends solitary confinement and establishes a system that prioritizes safety and support for all in the jails, It requires separation immediately after a violent incident for the safety of staff and people in custody. It requires due process before a sentence to RMAS, and it establishes programming and support as a priority to create an environment where behavior change is both possible and rewarded. We look forward to bringing this rule to the board for a final vote in the coming weeks. Sadly, there have been 3 deaths in custody and 1 just after release since the last public meeting in March. A 37-year-old man passed away at AMKC on March 19th. A 37-year-old man passed away at EMTC on April 19th. A 45-year-old man passed away at OBCC on April 30th. A 48-year-old man passed away at Elmhurst Hospital on March 16th. after a compassionate release on March 3rd. 2 correction officers passed away in April. Officers Tracy Barnes and Oyedele Omilabu. We send our deepest and most heartfelt condolences to each of these individuals, to their families, their friends, and their loved ones. I have one more minor announcement. The Board of Corrections downtown office has moved and is now located at 2 Lafayette, room 1221. The new board office is, downtown office is 2 Lafayette, room 1221 in Lower Manhattan. We look forward to welcoming you all to the new renovated space in the coming months. The main phone number remains the same, 212-669-7900. Thank you to the Director of Human Resources and Administration, Adil Tahar, for his work leading the move, as well as to our colleagues at DCAS for managing the renovation. Now for the work today at hand. The department is requesting a 6-month variance to continue to operate the separation status unit. Before the public has an opportunity to comment, the variance will be presented. Meg, please share with us the variance.
Sure. The separation status is a highly restrictive housing area created to house people who have a positive body scan or refuse to be scanned. The board first approved the first iteration of this variance at its November 2019 public meeting, and the board approved its most recent iteration at the January 2021 public meeting. The variance allows the department to operate separation status if it meets 15 requirements imposed as conditions on the variance. These conditions regulate aspects of the following departmental practices and procedures: body scanning in jail, transferring a person in and out of the separation status unit, providing access to services within the separation status unit, reporting, and staff training. Board staff has reviewed departmental audits and conducted our own analysis of the separation status unit with the following findings. The department's use of body scanners has been limited since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, with fewer scans conducted as part of the new admissions process. The department's recent use of the separation status unit has been extremely limited, with only 1 placement in the unit since the November board meeting. That placement was in February. Board staff found the department complied with all variance requirements with respect to this placement. The department attributes this decline in separation status placements due to increased awareness about separation status among people in custody, steady intake staff who encourage individuals in custody to surrender any contraband, and COVID-related court closures. Since November of 2020, the department has trained 125 staff in online radiation safety, 147 staff in body scanner operation, and 73 staff in image evaluation. Compliance with the staff training requirements has improved. Departmental audits examining the training credentials of staff who conducted and supervised scans, as well as those who reviewed separation status placements. Between December 2020 and March 2021, these audits found that all staff conducting scans were trained, but some staff who supervised scans were insufficiently trained, though compliance improved over time. Between December of 2020 and March 2021, insufficiently trained staff supervised 2%, or 43 of all audited scans, 36 in December, 1 in January, and 6 in February. By March, no audited scans were supervised by insufficiently trained staff. The department reports that all insufficiently trained staff members were referred to the investigation division for further investigation and to the IT department for immediate revocation of the login credentials utilized. Finally, on April 1st, Governor Cuomo signed the HALT Solitary Confinement Act. The HALT Act, which takes effect on April 1 of 2022, regulates the use of segregated confinement, which is defined as cell confinement for more than 17 hours a day, other than in facility-wide emergency or for the purposes of providing medical or mental health treatment. We believe these regulations would apply to placements in separation status unit lasting more than 17 hours. And that is the board's presentation.
Thank you. I would now, I'll ask for the department to present, and then we will go to public comment.
Good morning, everyone. This is Chief Stu speaking. I'll be presenting on the separation status on behalf of the department. Pursuant to section 1 through 15C of the New York City Board of Corrections minimum standards, the New York City Department of Corrections requests a 6-month variance renewal from the BOC minimum standards outlined within this letter for the purpose of maintaining the safety and security of departmental facilities where individuals in custody are known or reasonably believed to have dangerous contraband secreted on or within their bodies. The department seeks this variance to take effect on May 15, 2021, the date upon which the current variance is set to expire.
Right. We will now move to public comment. And for those who've been joining us for the last several months since COVID began, you probably know this this part of the meeting down. I don't need to say it, but for those who are joining for the first time, I will. I have a list of speakers who have signed up to speak. I'm going to call each person's name. When you hear your name, please raise your hand using the hand icon below the participants list on your WebEx screen. If you don't see the participants list, click on the silhouette of a person on the menu at the bottom of your screen. Once you open the participants list, you should see the hand icon in order to raise your hand. When you raise your hand, we will unmute you and you will be able to turn on your video. You can then begin your public comment. I will tell you when it has been 3 minutes and we will move to the next speaker. You should limit your comments to the requested variance. We will hold a general public comment period at the end of the meeting. The board also welcomes written comment. Please email your written comments to boc@boc.nyc.gov, boc@boc.nyc.gov, or mail them to the new office address, 2 Lafayette, 12th floor, room 1221, New York, New York, 10007. 2 Lafayette, 12th floor, room 1221, New York, New York, 10007. I will now call on our first speaker. Ashaki Antoine. All right. Her hand is raised and you will be unmuted. Okay, please begin.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Asaki Antoine, the first citywide trustee of the Corrections Officers Benevolent Association. Today, I'm here to provide public comment regarding the 6-month limited variance request, the use of separation status housing, and I'm also requesting said variance considered and approved by the board. As we are all aware, the introduction of prison contraband, including scalpels, makeshift weapons, and drugs pose a serious safety and security issue in the facilities. It is one of the most serious issues faced within the department and has become detrimental to maintaining order. Inmate assaults have increased 284%. This is an alarming percentage, especially at a time where the jail population has increased and lawlessness has taken over at every facility. The use of the body scanners is a great tool, if indeed it is being utilized after every slashing, stabbing, or where it is confirmed via genetic footage of an inmate displaying a weapon in the facility. The use of separation status housing as an alternative for inmates who refuse to comply with orders to relinquish contraband is also useful. It is another significant way to reduce the introduction of dangerous weapons that can be used against correctional officers, civilians, and inmates. In addition, it would also reduce the introduction of drugs within a facility, which can prevent widespread overdose, which can also lead to serious medical conditions and or, unfortunately, an inmate demise. Currently, the shortage of correctional officers and the decrease of daily facility searches in the facility is a recipe for a steep increase of prison contraband. I'm requesting that you approve the variance presented by the Department of Corrections. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public speaker is COBA President Benny Basio.
He's not in the room right now.
Okay. Our next speaker is Kayla Simpson. Okay. I see her hand raised. Okay.
Good morning.
Please
Can you
begin.
hear me?
Yes, please begin.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you this morning. My name is Kayla Simpson. I am a staff attorney at the Prisoners' Rights Project of the Legal Aid Society. First, I just want to wish Commissioner Brand well, and we look forward to continuing the important work of addressing the crisis in the jails. Separation status. We appreciate that there has been a lower incidence of using separation status, which is certainly in large part due to accountability measures like the board's conditions, like the reporting requirements. Those metrics are important and are in themselves a reminder that there are eyes on this severe and punitive practice. But even with the reduced use, we wanted to take the time this morning to oppose this variance. And the reason why is first, because there will inevitably be times when the department utilizes this brutal tool more frequently. And second, because it is worth remembering that these are extreme conditions, as acknowledged by the discussion of whether it qualifies under HALT. And having this place that has been described by people in custody and board staff alike as a dungeon, as a sanctioned option within the jails, means that there's at best a razor-thin barrier between the everyday humanity of the correctional setting and the cruel. That razor-thin margin requires hypervigilance from this board. And we have to remember the context in which we're having this conversation. The board is in the process of considering and voting out a proposed restrictive housing rule that purports to seek to eradicate abusive practices of isolation and deprivation. The department is under intense criticism for its inability to adequately manage and operate even general population units within the jails, disrupting basic and essential functions like meal service or access to medical care, which is especially important when considering variance conditions that rely on staff implementation of policies. And we must acknowledge, too, that there have been an alarming number of deaths in the jails lately, as the chair mentioned, suicides, fatal health outcomes. And that happens because operational failures occur even in general population and can have severe consequences. And we don't say this to be alarmist. We say this because, given all of this context, 72 hours in a place like this can truly be dangerous. What dark corners will we allow in these jails? Is this really the best we can do? Certainly, at a minimum, the board's prior conditions on this variance to curb the most grotesque parts of this practice must remain, but there are critical pieces still missing. These conditions are, I will hear more about them, I think, but there's still the possibility of indefinite confinement here. The board should set definite limits that are consistent with medical judgment about the risks of these contraband items. And the board should require that CHS screen people prior to placement in the setting for physical and mental health vulnerabilities. People in custody must have an expedited process to challenge their placement that involves an external actor like the board. And finally, we haven't heard sufficient explanation of why, if a person is suspected of non-weapon contraband like drugs, the setting is justified. There must be a much more stringent showing of why the dungeon unit is necessary. The board must keep this practice under a microscope. We think that no variance should be granted, but if it is, it should be for a very short time and with strict conditions. We all understand wanting to resolve issues and not having to return to them frequently. But if this dark corner is to exist in the jails, the board must shine as much light on it as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Danielle Gerard is our next speaker. Danielle Gerard. Okay, please begin.
Good morning, Chair Jones, Austin, board members, and Ms. Egan. I'm Danielle Gerard, Senior Staff Attorney at Children's Rights. We urge the Board of Correction to deny the department's variance request. First, separation status housing is punitive segregation by another name. Second, as we have testified previously, the variance request does not include any provision regarding the treatment of young adults. This is a significant problem because isolation of any kind is particularly detrimental to young adults. They should not be placed in separation housing under any circumstances. Although the department claims that since January 21, only one person has been placed in separation status housing, in the board's most recent report on separation status, young adults and people of color were disproportionately represented in this housing. As long as separation status housing exists, this could occur again. Third, as the department acknowledges in its request, separation status housing also violates a multitude of minimum standards. For example, regarding lock-in, there was no provision for out-of-cell time at all and no possibility of outdoor recreation. This is surely torture. Regarding law library access, the department writes that all individuals housed in separation status housing may request law library services, which are fulfilled accordingly. The department adds that individuals cannot be transported to the library, though, and does not specify how law library services will actually be fulfilled. With regard to access to courts and legal services, the department's attempt to incorporate due process provisions is symbolic at best. There must be stronger due process protections for adult placement in separation status housing, including providing actual access to counsel, timely notice, and an opportunity to be heard. Fourth, Children's Rights notes once again that this variance seems to grant the department a great deal of discretion regarding compliance with the minimum standards, allowing it to deny the most basic rights to which incarcerated individuals, including young adults, are entitled. As the board moves forward to abolish solitary confinement, which you have proclaimed you will do, extending the department's ability to use yet another form of it does not make sense. In requesting this variance, the department also underscores the need for the board to revise the proposed rules to place a strict limit on the number of times a variance can be sought and granted. Now is the time to prevent further governing by variance. Now is the time actually to abolish solitary confinement. We urge the board to deny the department's request. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Minister Dr. Victoria Phillips, Ms. V. Is Ms. V with us?
Give me 1 second. I'm having some. Yeah.
Good deal. Please begin, Ms. V.
Peace and blessings. Good morning, everyone. I was going to talk about the variance myself, but I actually have a call right now from DOC, and I would like the individual to speak about their conditions. Go ahead. The board is listening.
My mail to go out. So for whatever reason, I don't know, but it's legal mail that says on the motion that it has to be sent out, registered or certified. And the individuals are telling me that they don't have no money in the in their account, whatever the case that sends this money out. I have individuals like Deputy Harvey that's refusing to send my mail out, and nobody. And I'm putting in for them. Nobody's following up on the complaints at all. I've called POC, and I have numerous complaints with her and policy numbers with her from calling her, and no one still to this date has came to see me. This has been going on since February 13th, and it's now March, almost March 13th. I mean, May 13th, and no one has came to see me to rectify the situation, to talk about the situation, or nothing like that. There's other situations here that's going on. We haven't had our tablets from the law library on it. We haven't had those for over a month. And we're supposed to have those for whatever reason they took them. We don't have nothing to do why they took them, but they took them and haven't given them back to us. So now we're stuck with no law library at all because they don't have no cases that the individuals can't give these individuals the cases because a lot of individuals don't know the cases of the law to send to the law library get cases sent back. So the not being followed up on, and the individuals here aren't doing their job in following up on the complaints that we put in. We put grievances in. The grievances aren't being followed up on anything of that nature. I'd like that to be rectified if possible. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you listening. Thank you very much.
And these are all reasons that someone can end up in some type of form of solitary or separation status. And I just thought it was really important for you to hear from the inside how it can escalate and someone can be pushed. Like this individual right here, and I want to make sure the board makes sure that there are no repercussions for him speaking to you today on the record. Please make sure of that. That is part of your duty. And it's very important that you hold DOC accountable because people end up in these units and and protocols are not being followed. I tell you this all the time. This is an individual that I brought on the record to you 3 times now, and you still have not followed up with him. And this is BOC that I brought this on the record as well. So I thank you so much for being brave. I know your time is getting ready to hang up. BOC now has it on the record, your direct voice, along with all your complaints you've sent to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. V.
Y'all have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to note, I wasn't able to hear everything clearly. And so, sooner rather than later, I'd like to see the transcript to hear specifically what he was talking about. I heard references to the tablets being withheld, to mail not being sent out. And then, of course, Ms. V stating that she has brought these issues to our attention before. So we will follow up, Meg.
And something about law library. You mentioned access to law library.
Okay.
And he made a reference because he cannot reach the courts. Because you have to notify the courts through certified mail, and he does not have access to money to send it. And so he's being held there without talking to the courts, can't fight for his case in law library. And these are exact reasons how you can end up, if you act out or something, you end up in solitary or any of these other units that they don't want to call solitary. So yeah, I thought it was very important for him to speak directly.
Very important. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. V. The next person to speak is Darlene McDay. Darlene McDay.
That person's not on right now.
Okay. The next person to speak is Omari Moore.
That person's also not on right now.
Justin Holmes Austin. Justin Holmes Austin.
That person's not on right now either.
Okay. Well, that concludes our public comment on the separation status variance. I will now turn to a vote on the variance. And before I do that, I would like to say that the department has asked for a 6-month variance, and I am asking that we keep the variance to 4 months. So I will first move, to get a motion, ask for a motion to bring this into a vote, and then we can discuss the time. We can discuss the debate and the conditions, including the one that I've now just put on the table. So I'm going to ask for a board member to move to vote on the requested variance.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, the floor is now open for debate and for the conditions. And let me just first say, I think it would be good before we move to debate and discussion. Meg, please read the existing conditions and the conditions that the board, would consider as part of the renewal.
Okay. Condition 1, all newly admitted people in custody shall receive a medical and mental health intake per minimum standards 304 prior to body scan. Condition 2, the department shall place a person in separation status only if the person has received a positive body scan or refuses to scan. Condition 3, The department shall house people in separation status within 4 hours of a positive scan or refusal to scan, absent extenuating circumstances, which shall be documented and communicated to the board in each instance. B, notify CHS of each person placed into and/or released from separation status upon the conclusion of each tour. Each notification is to include a notification to the pharmacy and mental health and individual specific information. For people released from separation status, DOC shall provide CHS with the person's new housing location. C, CHS shall provide daily medical and mental health rounds to people housed in separation status and shall have the authority to determine if any person should be removed for clinical evaluation or treatment. D, institute one correction officer to one person in custody observation of each person throughout placement in separation status and fully document such observation. E, provide opportunities for regular visiting and attorney visiting by a secure video conferencing system. F, the department shall consult with the Office of Court Administration on producing people in separation status to court and shall produce any person the court orders to be present. If the court requests that the person not be produced, the department shall, to the extent possible, enable the person to participate in his court proceeding through a secure video conferencing system. Condition 4. When a person remains in separation status for 72 hours, the Chief of Department, the Bureau Chief of Security, and the GRVC Warden shall meet to develop an individualized plan for moving the person out of separation status. The committee shall meet and develop a plan every 72 hours until the person is moved out of separation status. The department shall provide each written plan to the board within 1 business day of the committee's meeting. Condition 5. Upon request, loose leaf legal materials shall be provided to people in separation status. This shall include legal mail and law library requests. The department may institute limits on the number of loose leaf pages a person may have in the person's cell at any given time. Condition 6, the department shall afford 1 hour per day of indoor recreation for people in separation status. Recreation will be provided on the housing unit in a closed space, but outside of the person's assigned cell. Recreation space shall include appropriate recreation equipment. Condition 7, the department shall not limit the number or duration of confidential calls to attorneys, the Board of Correction, the Department of Investigation, or any other monitoring body. Condition 8, signs shall be posted at intake to advise individuals in custody that they can make complaints about body scanners, body scanning to DOC's Office of Constituent and Grievance Services, or 311, and upon release from DOC custody, request the total accumulated radiation exposure from all body scans of that person conducted during the incarceration. Condition 9, by the next business day of a person's placement in and release from separation status, the department shall provide the board access to all supporting documentation related to the person's placement and release. The department shall provide the board with a monthly public report on the implementation of separation status. The requirements for the notification and report are outlined in Appendix A hereto. Condition 10, the department shall offer a daily opportunity to scan to each person in separation status and document such offers. Condition 11, the department shall provide access to newspapers and magazines. The department may limit the number of newspapers and magazines that a person may have in cell at any one time. Condition 12, all staff operating or supervising scanners shall have completed radiation safety and body scanner operation trainings. All staff reviewing and approving separation status, placements, and removals shall have completed training on image evaluation. Condition 13, upon placement, all people in separation status shall be provided with verbal and written information on how to access services, all restrictions to services while in the unit, the right to a daily scan, the potential risks of ingesting or secreting contraband, and the right to individualized counseling on those risks and an assessment by clinical staff in a clinical setting. This information shall be readily available in the separation status unit in both English and Spanish and any other language the department deems necessary. Condition 14, the department shall provide access to media via phone calls. Media interviews via phone shall be scheduled via requirements of minimum standard 1-14B and DOC's media access policy. And condition 15, if an untrained staff member uses a body scanner or reviews a body scan image in relation to admission to or discharge from separation status, the variance is withdrawn until the department demonstrates it has cured the problem.
Thank you. We will now begin with debate and comment on the proposed variance and the conditions. And as I said, I would like to see a 4-month variance. We are here to listen to the department, and we're here to listen to the advocates, and when possible, as Ms. V does, bringing in detained persons to share with us their experiences. Having heard from some of the advocates about the concerns with the variance, as well as the timing being one, the length of it, I am proposing a 16th condition that it be just for 4 months. Or maybe that's not a condition, but a time concern. So that's my rationale for doing so. Are there others who would like to comment at this time? Bobby?
Yes, I support the chair's recommendation regarding the time frame. I also think there are critical elements to this variance which are very problematic. One, the fact that the time in separation status is potentially infinite. The Board of Correction should not be party to a variance to our rules, which is in great distinction to our rules. The other issue is, as has been mentioned earlier by Kayla, this is a terrible place. This is not just any place in the jails. I would consider it among the worst places in the jail, and that's why the department chose it. It argues that the department argues that despite the fact that it's never used, it's been used twice in the past since October. That this is a psychological response to the threat of the and there's no other situation in my years on the board which there's been a claim that a psychological threat matters. I would support the condition of the chair. I support a condition that limits the amount of time in separation status to no more than 3 days, with some way of reevaluating the situation. I support the discussion about this should not be used for drugs. We should not respond to the presence of drugs in the institution by creating a torturous place. And lastly, I'll be voting no. And one other thing, just a question to the department. I don't know if they're ready to respond, but they're aware that the halt legislation will probably involve this unit. What is their response? Do they plan to continue it after halt goes into effect, if we give them the variance?
So, Bobby, just want two things to note. All of Bobby, the conditions that you raise are new conditions, so we will treat them separately. We'll talk about the existing conditions and do a vote on that, the new conditions. But Bobby has raised a question, and would the board, would the department respond to the question at this time?
Good morning. This is Heidi Grossman. The department will be complying with the state law when it goes into effect. We also expect to work with the state to receive interpretive guidance, but our intention is to comply with the law.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other comments?
Yes, Jeff, I'd like to comment.
Okay, Mr. Perino, James.
Yes. I saw what it looked like before Chief Jennings actually modified it, and how Bobby described it, absolutely it looked like horrible. It was a dungeon, it was the worst place. But they put a lot of work. The department has put a lot of work into that particular area, and has worked with the board on several different issues. It's bright. It has the minimum stuff that is actually needed. It has a teleconferencing unit in the area, and it's actually pretty high tech. I think locking people down is never a good thing, but I think what we should consider is there's nothing holding the individual in there other than their response of not giving up contraband. So it's not like we're giving them, all right, you got 10 days in punitive segregation. No, this person does not go in this area, unless they refuse to give up the contraband. And it seems to be very effective. I mean, contraband is probably the most dangerous thing that we have in the jails today. It could kill people, and it maims people. It deforms people for life. And one thing I disagree with Bobby. I mean, with drugs, even though it's not a weapon, it's really the root of all evil in jail. Once drugs get introduced in the health system, people are getting cut, beat up, and just over the drugs. So drugs in itself is just as dangerous than any razor coming in, because usually to get the drugs, razors are used. So they both bring a very, very, it's very dangerous. And also, I mean, the department, Chief Jennings promised that she'll use it sparingly. Chief Stooks says he looks at everything. And I think that's like a credit to their commitment to the board, that it's only, I think, Bobby, you said it's been used twice since October. So I think the commitment that the department has used, it uses only in a last resort. I mean, it should be celebrated, not to say, hey, you don't use it, you don't need it. I think, when detainees have weapons and they're in intake, it is a deterrent. Like, you want to go in the separation unit, or you want to just give us your weapon. And I would guarantee, with my experience, many times they're like, all right, here, just take the weapon. I don't need it. So if it's a tool that the department has and is effective to keep contraband out when we're at our most violent stage, I really would, I'm going to vote for it. And Chair, I'm good with the 4 months, or I'm good with the 6 months. I think it's a tool that the department's going to need. But I think the 4 months keeps everybody honest, because if it starts going in a different direction, we can address it quicker than 6 months. So I agree with the 4 months. The 4 months is fine, but I think it's a tool that we need. And I think when a lot of people compare it to punitive segregation, it's not. There's nothing stopping this person from leaving that area once they give up the weapon or the contraband. So it's not like, okay, you're going to be in there for 10 days. No, when you give us that razor that's being shown up on this x-ray, then you can leave immediately. So these are my feelings towards it. I think it's a tool that the department needs, and I think it's a tool that they've shown to us. Because in the beginning, a lot of people were going in there. I don't know if everybody recalls. A lot of people were going in, not just one in like several months or two, So I think they've shown that they're going to use it sparingly, and that's my comment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Very much appreciated. Jackie?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I too welcome the shortening of the proposed variance to 4 months from 6. Following on Mr. Perino's remarks, I agree that the department needs effective tools to address contraband. And I'd like to hear the department speak a bit to how it is tracking and evaluating the relative effectiveness of separation status and the use of body scanners as a tool in comparison with other search methods and other tools that it has to limit contraband in the jails.
Hi, good morning. This is Chief Jennings. And so thank you for the question, Jackie. So there is a report that is monitored and generated out of the Office of the Operation Intelligence Security, which is ran by Chief Stooks. And so that report is made public and published so that we can actually determine how many people are going into separation status, what contraband is being found prior to the scan or after the scan and prior to being placed in separation orders. So we have done a lot of work as a department around this separation status. It's not that it is something that we're so proud of, but we also recognize that it is a very instrumental tool with immediately removing persons when there is weapons. And just like James pointed out, this person has the free will to relinquish any contraband that they have prior to going into separation. And I think that we have been very instrumental in prohibiting and removing contraband. Chief Stewart can rule some of the items that are found. We have done our due diligence and have been responsible with everything that we've said that we would do surrounding our average stay is only 1.4 days when a person is placed in there. They are ordered body scans. We have to work with the board on providing some sort of exercise equipment plus kiosk reports in the library. And so we are going to continue, like DC Grossman said, we will comply with the law. But we also recognize is that for me, for 4 months or 6 months, it's a tool that we need and we will continue to look for, because at the end of the day, it's really about people being safe. Rather, it's the individual in custody, the correction officer, or coming into our system. Our job is to keep people safe. And so, Chief Stokes, if you could please go over some of the contraband that has been recovered.
Yes, good morning, everyone, again. Echoing the statements of the chief, we have complied with the standards and separation status as a last resort. However, just to give some emphasis on the statements regarding placements, as our goal not to place people in separation status, our goal is contraband discovery. So we don't define the success of this unit based on the amount of placements. We define the success and efficiency of the department and its operation with the use of body scanners is recovery of contraband from persons in custody to promote safety. So just to go through some of the data, I will not go by dates. I will go on some of the items. These are items that were after a positive scan that were recovered, resulting in no placement in separation status. On one particular day, one young man surrendered the institutional cameras with a sharpened point, a handle. One particular day, a young man surrendered 1.5 piece of plastic and a 1.5 inch ceramic blade. That is before a scan. After a positive scan on one particular day, a young man surrendered a 1.1 sharpened piece of metal secreted with a pin cap after positive scan. On a particular day, a young man surrendered a 1 sharpened piece of metal and 60 strips of fentanyl after the scan. On one particular day, a young man surrendered 1.5 inch round big pen with a sharpened point. On one particular day, this is all after a positive scan. One young man surrendered 1.5 inch sharpened piece of metal wrapped with a cloth as a handle. On one particular day, one young man surrendered a 1.5 inch sharpened piece of metal secreted inside an ink pen cap. And I could go on, but I want to continue to list but this is just a snapshot of contraband was discovered persons after positive and not placement in separation status.
And so I just want to conclude and talk about a comment that stating that drugs in an instance where people are taking illegal substances against a doctor's prescription is very dangerous. And when we have individuals in our custody who are high And I don't know if you've seen the effect that fentanyl does to individuals. And if they are overdosed, it will lead to death. Drugs are just as dangerous as weapons.
Thank you. Jacqueline, any further questions, comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. Are there other board members who would like to provide comment, ask questions?
I have one additional question. Appreciate the responses to my other comments. There have been no visits for a year. There has been limited civilian participation in the work of the department. Has there been a change in the report of substance use, positive urines, searches, or findings through through scanning over the past year compared with previous years? You'd have to adjust that for population, but I wonder if you've learned anything about how drugs get into the facilities.
So we have continued to look at any avenue in which contraband, narcotics, drugs are entering into our institution. We have been monitoring. We have people who are soaking letters to individuals soaked in fentanyl and other means of getting this dangerous contraband in. So we are going to continue looking at every opportunity that a person has to receive this contraband. We have continued searching, and we will continue trying to prevent and eliminate any contraband from coming into our institutions.
What did we find? Or what did you find? I'm sorry.
What did we find when?
What is your take on how the drugs are coming in? You said you're looking at it. I just want to know what you found.
Okay, good morning. This is Chief Stu speaking. What we have found is since the suspension of in-person visits within our institutional facilities following CDC guidance, we found that incarcerated persons have resorted to finding innovative ways to introduce contraband through a means of mail. So what we have found to have happened is they correspond with persons in free society who text papers and letters and puzzle books and soak them with the fentanyl and the other ingredients that goes within these source of illegal drugs and attempt to introduce them in our facility via the mail process. So we've had.
So the mail is 100% of how it's coming in, or is it 50%? I mean, break it down. I'm more than curious. I think it's extremely.
I have not analyzed and come up with a percentage, so I'm not.
So let me just interject here. I think this is an excellent question. It's I think it's actually something that merits further discussion, but it's not on point with the variance right now with respect to what we are, what we are considering. And so while I think it's an important issue and I do want to address it, I am going to ask our executive director, Margaret Egan, to put this as a topic that we will raise. I appreciate your raising it. Dr. Safer, I think it's a very important question and point that we need to take a look at. I believe, as well as, Bobby, Dr. Cohn raising this. I think it's an important point. I just want to note that this is not the topic. It's the issue at hand right now is the variance. And so we need to center on that, but it is a very important question and topic, and we will take it up. Thank you for pointing that out, raising the concern. Are there any other questions or comments?
I think in the whatever length the variance takes, this and a number of other questions, which would be similar, perhaps not what we need to hear today, is what we should be focused on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to come together on that, because there's nobody on any side of how they feel about this that doesn't see the danger of what's getting through. Okay,
Right.
so we really need to know that, and it's
The root causes, why we have this
the
problem.
root causes, what they are, and how we can, I mean, because this is discussed year after year after year after year.
Yes.
And, you know, it has a way, and I think I know why,
Yeah.
but, you know, we need to know the answer to that.
I agree. I fully concur, completely agree, and I appreciate you for raising it. So duly noted, and we will bring this, I don't know if we'll bring it to the next meeting, just thinking about, we'll see what we can do, but I think it's an important point, and I thank you for raising it, Steve. Are there other questions or comments?
Just one comment from me. I thank you, Chair. I think what Steve said is absolutely right. Looking at the under the root causes of this, when this was first proposed using this tool, we were all supportive of the tool to be able to identify and get rid of contraband in the facilities. And so I think what the department has done and demonstrated, and this goes back to James's point about using separation status very judiciously, I really appreciate. And when you look at the data, how much they used it between January and now, I really appreciate it. And I think this 4 months gives us an opportunity to reset the parameters so that what we heard from the advocates and what we heard from the department is that this tool is used in a way that doesn't create additional isolation. It is used judiciously to get at the root causes of identifying and getting rid of contraband. So I fully support putting the root causes on the agenda at some point and having a deep dive conversation about that, but also using the 4-month extension, just not as a 4-month to use the tool, but a 4-month to really examine the guidelines and conditions under which this tool will be used.
Right.
Thank you. Agreed. Are there other comments, questions? Okay. So I'm going to ask our executive director to just ensure that I am managing us through this next step correctly. Bobby has introduced additional conditions. Perhaps I should first ask for a vote on the existing conditions. Then do we need a vote on the change to the time to 4 months, or can we just vote that out as part of the overall?
Bennett, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe we can vote on the existing variance is a 4-month variance with the existing conditions. So Bennett, am I right? We can vote on an extension of the existing variance with the existing conditions at 4 months.
But before that we do that, I guess we would also have to first vote on the new conditions proposed by Bobby.
I think that because the Department of Correction requested a 6-month variance, the board should vote as to whether to change it to a 4-month variance.
Okay, so we've got a few votes here. So I just want to make sure that we have the order correctly. We can first vote on the change from 6 months to 4 months. Then we can vote on the new conditions presented by Bobby, and then we can vote on if they, based on what we learn, based on the vote, then we will vote out the entire request with the existing. Is that correct? And any changes that will be made. Is that fair? Is that right?
Yep,
okay.
That sounds right,
okay.
Bennett. That sounds right.
Yes. Did you say you should vote to affirm the current conditions? There should be one vote on the full package of conditions. Okay.
Yep.
Yes. But first, I'm going to take a vote on the conditions that have been proposed by Bobby, by Dr. Cohn. And I believe it important, just given the conversation that has followed after what he presented, that he restate them. for everybody. So if you would restate the conditions that you have introduced, Bobby, that would be helpful.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I believe I suggested that, well, I supported the 4-month thing. I said that the limit of time, there should be a limit to the amount of time in the in separation status, and I proposed 3 days with some reevaluation process. And I'm sorry that I didn't submit this earlier, so it could be I could have defended this position better, but we should not have an unlimited time in separation status. And I think that I suggested also that this process is deficient and that there's no due process. But I'm not sure how to get that in right now, and I'm going to withdraw that concern. So just have the
time
a discussion. I appreciate other board members' comments on the need for a limited time in this place.
So having heard the proposal restated, time limitation to 3 days, or is there any comment, any question from other board members?
3 days.
Chair, I'd like to say, I mean, I agree with Bobby with the 3 days, but I mean, this is something that I believe maybe we should bring up in 4 months from now, because it's something that needs thought. After the 3 days, what do we do with a person that refuses to give up a weapon, which I'm not even sure if it even got to that. I don't think it ever went past 3 days, but if it was, what do we do with it? And I believe the department had a plan. So, you know, as much as I agree with Bobby, I think we need the time to have kind of plan laid out where if someone doesn't give up a weapon, all right, now it's the department's problem, you know, and then they go out and they cut somebody. So I just think that needs a little time thought, you know, before we vote on it today.
Okay.
And
Maybe.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I know that this has been part of the conversation since we started considering these variances for separation status. And I know that we have a provision in the variance that requires a review and a planning process that is an individualized planning process when a person is in separation status. It may be 72 hours, it may be 48 hours. So I guess I'd kind of like confirmation on what is currently in our conditions, and also some comment, if possible, from the department on how that review process is working, because that is the review process we put in place, I believe, at the outset as a problem-solving mechanism to ensure that no one stays in separation status beyond that point.
So Jackie, the review time frame is condition 4. I'll read it again for everyone. So condition 4 is when a person remains in separation status for 72 hours, the chief of department, the bureau chief of security, and the GRVC warden shall meet to develop an individualized plan for moving the person out of separation status. The committee shall meet and develop a plan every 72 hours until the person is moved out of separation status. The department shall provide each written plan to the board within 1 business day of the committee's meeting. So I think that is the condition that addresses that time and review.
Okay. Jacqueline, any other further questions, comments?
So I'd like to ask the department, have we ever had anybody past 72 hours since we put this into place?
Good morning. Again, this is Chief Stu speaking. Since we were authorized to begin utilizing body scanners in July of 2019, there have been one person who have exceeded the state above 72 hours. That person was afforded all of the policy that governs their stay, which was to remove their stay. However, this person was just refusing to comply with the body scanner protocol. However, they have in person, I can say with a great level of confidence, who would have exceeded the 72 hours. However, there is departmental leadership, executive membership from all levels that engage these persons, including the warden of the facility, the warden security staff, CIB, members of the commissioner's office, that we make all efforts, chief of the department, to engage these persons to surrender their contraband or submit to a body scanner so that they can be removed from separation status. So the response to the question is there was one person since we began operation.
And Chief Stoops, how much over the 72 hours did it go, and what was the planning that got him out of it? He said he gave up the weapon after a certain amount of time?
It was a constant engagement of, leadership and facility staff, just constantly engaging this person of the consequences, and that it was important as an agency that we recover the contraband. And after a whole lot of hours of engagement, the person finally complied.
And how much after the 72 hours was that? And he did give up a weapon?
Yes, we got a weapon from the person. The person, I can't recall the exact amount of hours, about maybe a day.
Yeah, all right, thank you, Chief Stoops.
You're welcome.
I believe that Vice Chair Stanley Richards had a point, comment, question.
Yes, thank you. I agree. I think what the department has demonstrated is that they don't want to use this tool or haven't used this tool the way when it first rolled out. I think the chief said the average length of stay is a day and a half or something like that. And he just testified that there was one person. I do agree with Bobby that we need to put some constraints. We don't want a shadow restrictive housing type model, but I don't think the way we do it is by adding additional conditions at this point in time. I think we are limiting it to 4 months if that's where the vote goes. And we use the 4 months, just as James said, to build out conditions that make sense for the people detained and make sense for the department to use this tool effectively and in line with the new halt regulations. And so we use this 4 months to really build out and fine tune how this tool is used, not by conditions at this particular point in this moment.
I'll withdraw the motion and be supportive of Stanley's suggestion.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you all. So we then now will move to a vote on a form. The department has presented a 6-month variance request. We can consider the 6-month or the 4-month. I will first, you know what? Let's first take a vote on a 4-month request if we are to ultimately approve it. So any questions, comments, concerns about 4-month versus 6 months? All right. Then I will do a roll call on the 4-month, a condition making it 4 months, since it changes the renewal request. Beginning with, just running through the screens, beginning with Board Member Cohen. I can't hear you. Just take.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Board Member Sherman.
Yes.
Board Member Franco.
Yes.
Board Member Carrion.
Yes.
Board Member Richards.
Yes.
Board Member Safer.
Support.
And Board Member Perino.
Yes.
Okay, and I support a 4-month variance request as well. And now we will vote on the 4-month with all of the conditions, the existing conditions as presented by Executive Director Egan. Beginning with Board Member Perino.
Yes.
Board Member Safer.
Support.
Sherman.
Yes.
Franco.
Yes.
Carry on.
Yes.
Cohen.
Yes, and I hope that we'll have this period to receive from the department an analysis of contraband that Dr. Safier and Mr. Richards asked for.
Indeed. Richards?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So the variance passes unanimously. Okay. We will now move to the next agenda item. And the next agenda item concerns an update on jail staffing. So at previous board meetings, board members have expressed concerns over the number of DOC staff who are out on any given day. From those discussions and the board's recent tours, we understand that the department is experiencing an acute staffing shortage. We appreciate the complex management challenges that are presented by thousands of staff members being out or unable to work security posts at any given time. Today's discussion about jail staffing is necessary and urgent as to ensure that the conditions in the jails are appropriate and the minimum standards are met. Board members and board staff have observed people spending significant lengths of time in intake. We've also monitored housing areas in the jails and have seen that they are being locked down due to insufficient staffing. A lockdown impacts nearly all of the minimum standards, including access to medical and mental health, time out of cell, recreation, visiting and televisiting, phone calls, showers, and more. We also understand, even when a jail is not locked down, critical services such as recreation, law library, grievance, and more are limited by the acute staffing shortage. We have asked the department to provide the board with an update on the staffing challenges and the actions they are taking to ensure that persons in custody are afforded conditions and services required by the board's minimum standards. And now would like to hear from the department.
Good morning, this is Commissioner Brand. As you know, we've had significant challenges since the beginning of COVID 14 months ago, as many of our staff, close to between 1,500 and 2,000, are unavailable to work on any given day. Most recently, several months ago, that challenge increased. But I can assure you that we have taken all measures to make sure that the jails are safely staffed and operations go on. This is not widespread across the department. We are seeing issues in particular jails, specifically AMKC, RNVC, and GRVC. We have redeployed staff from all of our support units. We have closed some of our support units to make sure that all of the uniformed staff who were not in security posts are now in the jails working. We have increased the availability of our medical staff and health management in order to clear people to return to work as quickly as possible. As you can imagine, those numbers created a backlog of getting people cleared to return to work, and we are working on that issue every single day. We make sure to relieve the people who have been on post the longest first, and then work to get all of our folks working long hours off of their posts. With regard to how that is managed, the Office of Administration is now managing the scheduling in those troubled jails directly from the Office of Administration, using my executive officer to clear those posts as quickly as they can, and reporting out to all managers and at City Hall on a 30-minute basis, so that we know how many posts need to be cleared and staffed. With regard to the operations of the jails, I'll turn that part over to Chief Jennings.
Okay, so good morning again. I just want to echo on all of what the commissioner said and some of the ways in which we have been monitoring and creating redeployment of individuals who are in units outside of the facility. In regards to lockdowns, the department has worked very hard in October of 2020 to finalize new policies with the monitor to speak specifically about when housing areas, either partial or full lockdowns, can be affected, and all of the different things in which has to be done when there is a lockdown. When we look at calendar year 20 versus 21, we're down 50% in lockdowns. We are only using them to a minimal. I know that this past, on the 2nd of May, there was a partial lockdown of the Anna and Cross symptom. It has been our only lockdown due to shortages of staffing, and there were only very specific housing areas that were locked down, and none of them were the mental health population, which is something that we have done in each lockdown to ensure that those areas are running as smoothly as possible. And so there has been a lot of collaboration. We have been working very diligently with CHS to ensure that there are vaccination schedules put out so that individuals in custody are being afforded the opportunity for vaccination and testing, and that we have been moving along with our COVID processes in reference to the EMTC Center, Eric and Taylor Center, where we are currently housing our new admissions. So we have put together a plan that has been working, and that when we find that there are some adjustments that need to be made, it has been expeditiously done so.
I would just like to add that if you recall, when we started the borough-based jail program process, we were slated to reduce our head count through attrition, which has been naturally happening, and we have not had a new recruit class in several years. We were slated to have 2 jails closed already, and the reduction in head count would have been offset by having those 2 jails closed. Due to COVID, we had to keep EMTC open to be our new admissions facility, and OBCC is also open to hold people separated and spread out during this pandemic. So this has all come together to create the situation that we find ourselves in.
Thank you. Are there questions, comments from board members?
Yes, I got a quick question. Commissioner, you're 100% correct. You know, instead of laying people off, firing them, that was the best way to do it. But with COVID popping up, and I know it's not your call, is probably City Hall, but you know, like as times change, like even in the NYPD and things are getting rough out there, they put a class in and they graduated one last week. You know, so when is it with corrections? Like, we need help. I mean, I know you can't get them yourself, but why aren't people listening to us and say, hey, we need help? There's a situation here that we weren't planning on. Exactly. You got 2 facilities. I mean, to run them 24/7 takes a lot of staff. You can't, the plan that was made to lower the correctional officer count got destroyed with COVID, just like everything else in our lives for the last year. I mean, who is it that's listening to say, hey, corrections are people too. We need staff. We need to man our facilities in a manner that we don't have to do these lockdowns. We can bring back visits, we can bring back programs, and we can be staffed at a safe level. Because I always say, you know, and I'm sure you've said it and I've heard the staff say it, if people aren't safe, nothing else matters. And, you know, without the proper staffing, and when you got staffing that's totally exhausted for doing two tours, you know, almost all the time, you know, and those jails that you said you had issues with, I know for a fact that's your hot jails. You know, GRVC, RNDC, and AMKC. These are where officers are engaging and working very hard, you know, and probably getting hurt and going out and getting sick. And, you know, so who is out there listening? We need staff, you know, and I know if you could, you'd get them, but we need staff. And until we get staff
to get into these facilities, our safety level is going to be jeopardized.
So
Thank you,
I
Chair.
think that, and I agree that people are being worked long hours, and that is not safe for anyone. We have recently been given the funding and permission to seat a class, so HR and AIU are actively engaged in that process. We will be seating 400 in a new class. During the height of the COVID, if you recall, there was plans in the city to lay off staff. And so as we were planning on staff layoffs, there certainly was not going to be a hiring of a new class during that time. And I'm not sure that we could have seated a class and trained them in our current academy situation with people spread out to maintain social distance. So we have sped up our hiring process and hope to have that class seated early fall.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'd like to make a comment. There is a management crisis and an operations crisis in the jails today. I visited with staff EMTC a few weeks ago, and we found people sleeping on the floor in intake for days at a time, delays in medical and mental health intake, and a facility staff that was not aware of what was going on. A facility of 500 people who doesn't have a warden. And we went there to investigate one of the 5 deaths that have occurred this year. Not having staff for closing down the major mental health facility on the island for a day, maybe a day and a half. That's unacceptable. That is really dangerous to everybody. Not giving recreation to that population only every other day. No recreation to the to men at EMTC. More suicides, serious suicide attempts than there have been before. A year ago there were 5,672 people in the jails. I mean, today there were 5,672 people in the jails. 1 year ago, there were 3,880 people in the jails. This is a 46% increase in the population. That's inconsistent with the notion that the department is working towards decreasing the population when it increases it almost 50% in 1 year. I think that if the mayor has been unwilling to carry out a decarceration plan, and in fact has a reincarceration plan, and the department is unable to staff intake and staff programs, then the city should let the judges know that it is not able to take people that they send to them. It is dangerous to the staff. It is dangerous to the people who are being incarcerated. And if New York City cannot run a jail system for 5,700 people, then maybe it can run a jail system for 3,900 people, the way it did a year ago, and the population should be emergently reduced. The commissioner cannot magically make another 1,000 officers appear, and she certainly hasn't given a date, even when the new class will graduate right now. This is a crisis situation. Judges should be made aware that people are not being provided with basic services to protect their health if they're being detained on Rikers Island. Misdemeanors should not be sent to Rikers Island. I don't, this was the position of the Board of Correction a year ago, and it should be the position today as well. Thank you.
Can I comment? Okay.
I just want to quickly chime in on the points made by Dr. Cohen. and then I will hear from you, Dr. Safer. I too agree that this is a crisis. This is more than a jail, a Department of Correction crisis. This is a city problem. Much like homelessness cannot be solved alone by the Department of Homeless Services, because it is not the Department of Homeless Services that creates the conditions that bring about the need for more shelter. It is not the Department of Correction that can alone address incarceration and decarceration. It is a city crisis. It is a citywide concern. I do want to share that how do I best say this? I believe that the commissioner moved and acted and was instrumental in helping to secure an additional class to bring new correction officers on, but that is not the only response. We do need to continually press for decarceration or decarceration as the preferred response, and incarceration only when needed. But I do think it important to recognize that the commissioner did move forward to try to bring on a new class, and did bring on a new class, is bringing a new class to address this problem. Board Member Safer?
I agree with what you're saying, Jennifer. I'll just focus in on two things. The role of the courts and how they're working at the moment. From my point of view, from looking at things, I think that's a major issue, major. And the second one is, and it's very important. There is not enough people, correctional officers and so forth, who don't want to take the vaccine. And it's hard for me to follow how many people are ill. So you have the worst of all situations. It's inflammatory. You have courts that are not acting in the way they were. We're losing the ground that we had all worked on originally. And we have vaccines that work, and people are not taking them. And if they're not going to take them, this is not going to end.
Right. Right. And to your point, Board Member Safer, it is my understanding that we're going to move into a COVID response in just a few minutes, but there are many steps that the department has been undertaking to try to engage staff and detain persons to take up the vaccine. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second.
Good. Great.
Are there other comments?
I would just like to add that over the past period, the department has, which is responsible for the 5A program, which is able to put people who are currently on Rikers Island to some kind of home release status. Nothing has happened in that program for quite a while. No one has been placed in that status. And one other element, the last two men who died on Rikers Island were there on temporary technical parole violation. That is another area which the mayor should work with the governor and the courts to not send these people to Rikers Island. There's no need for them to be there.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no other comments, then we will move to receive a coronavirus 2019 update from Correctional Health Services and the Department of Correction.
I'll give a quick overview, and then we will turn it over to the department and CHS. We continue to applaud the work of DOC, CHS, and people in custody to mitigate the spread of the virus, and certainly applaud their efforts to vaccinate as many people as possible. Like CHS and the department, we believe that vaccination for all who are in the jails, people in custody, and staff is essential to ending this emergency. As CHS and DOC work diligently to ensure that those who are eligible to receive the vaccine do so, we must continue to be vigilant on mask use, reducing the jail population, social distancing, and testing. As of April 30th, 11% of the population, or a total of 652 patients in jail, had confirmed COVID-19. That's both active and recovered, with 0.5% of the population, or 33 patients, having an active COVID infection. As of April 30th, 2021, there were 206 CHS staff and 2,096 DOC staff who had been infected with COVID-19. In April, DOC reported 127 new staff cases, up 31% compared to March when there were 97 new cases reported. CHS reported 7 new staff cases in April, down 63% compared to March when there were 19 cases reported. In terms of the jail population, due to the coordinated efforts to rapidly reduce the jail population during the first wave of the pandemic, the jail population fell to a historic low of 3,832 on April 29th of 2020. Between April 29th of 2020 and March 29th of 2021, the jail population has increased 51%. Since March 29th of 2021, the jail population has begun to decrease slightly and was at 5,696 as of April 30th. As of April 30th, the New York City jails held 4,989 people in pretrial detention. 223 people were serving a city sentence. 219 people were held on a technical parole violation with no open case. 265 people were held in custody for other reasons. That could be state sentenced or state ready. And there were 830 people ages 50 and over, including 47 of those who are held solely on a technical parole violation. In terms of housing area density, as of April 30th, 76% of people in jail were housed in units that exceeded 50% capacity. As of April 30th, 47% of all people in jail were in a unit exceeding 75% capacity. And in terms of our rehousing estimate, as of April 30th, without accounting for operational or individual specific security factors, the board estimates that to achieve 50% capacity level across all general population housing areas, the department would need to rehouse approximately 1,094 people in general population units that exceed 50% capacity. That's 420 in cell units and 674 in dorm units, and open a minimum of 36 general population units. An additional approximately 87 people in mental health, 79 people in protective custody, and 40 people in new admission housing units would need to be rehoused to achieve the 50% capacity across those specialized units. In terms of testing, in March, there's been an average of 2 COVID tests administered for every 100 people in custody. And in terms of active infections, as of Thursday, May 6th, there were 21 COVID-19 patients with active infections, and the 7-day average daily positivity rate was at 1.59%. On April 5th, CHS began adding vaccination metrics to its public data snapshots. Between January 7th and May 6th of 2021, CHS administered 1 vaccine dose to 2,169 people in custody and completely vaccinated 1,691 people. On April 20th, CHS began reporting the percentage of people in jail who had received at least 1 vaccine dose, and on April 28th, CHS began reporting the percentage of people in jail who had completed vaccination. As of May 6th, 33% of people in jail had received 1 vaccine dose, and 26% of people in jail had completed their vaccination. And finally, on critical services, since March of 2020, normal jail operations have been significantly reduced, including the suspension of visiting, congregate religious services, and law library. As the infection rates in the city and in the jails reduce and more people are vaccinated, we understand that the department is poised to resume these services as soon as public health officials deem it safe and responsible for all. I will now turn it to DOC and CHS to provide their updates.
Good morning. Good morning. This is Patricia Feeney, Deputy Commissioner for Quality Assurance and Integrity. In order to support the department's enhanced sanitation program, since the beginning of COVID in March 2020, the department has trained 4,407 staff and incarcerated individuals on enhanced sanitation programs. In 2021, 478 staff and 319 incarcerated individuals have received this training. We continue to conduct the multi-tiered audit process to ensure that we have operable sinks and soap available, that sanitation supplies are available, and that personal protective equipment, including masks, are available to both the incarcerated individuals and to our staff. The public health sanitarians continue to do their inspections weekly and monthly throughout the facilities where we ensure that sanitation is being performed. And if there are any deficiencies identified during the audits or during the inspections, those are abated immediately. The department has printed over 12,000 posters as part of our communications program to provide information to both incarcerated individuals and to our staff. In additional, COVID information is given out through DOC TV, through the internet, through social media, through meetings with our staff. And this last 2 weeks, we created an email address, DL COVID questions, that staff can submit any questions related to COVID, and the appropriate manager will get back to them as quickly as possible with the requested information or answers to their questions.
Thank you. Are there questions, comments?
I have a question, but it's a question to CHS. And, you know, we've been talking to the department about opening up visits and bringing services back online. And in the nation, we hear we need to trust the science and we need to talk to our health professionals. So I'm starting from the assumption that at this particular point, with the city reopening, and we still remain, the department still remains shut down from visits and from services, that the guidance is coming from our public health professionals saying that the jails are not ready to be opened. So I would like to know very clearly and definitively who is making the decision around reopening up visits and services, and when can we expect to get notification from our public health professionals that it is safe to reopen visits, whether it's in a limited way, whether it's fully, and reopen up services so people can get access to services. We are opening back up the city, but yet we still have a closed, isolated Allen. Where do we stand? And we need a definitive answer. And if it's not CHS, if it's H&H, if it's DOHMH, we need them to say definitively what conditions they will reopen the Allen so we can begin visits and begin services. The department has shared their plan about reopening and about visits. We need definitive answers. So I put that question out there.
So, and I appreciate that, Stanley. I'll just go a step further and say that if the city and the state have committed to a full reopening by May 19th, then what we would expect to see as a board, the plans of the department and of CHS to be in full compliance with what the governor and the mayor have put forward.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from other members of the board concerning this particular issue?
Is CHS going to respond to Stanley's question?
And Bobby, I think the response is good, but I think we are just modifying it a bit. Not so much when do you plan to, but to be compliant and in the line, to be aligned with what the city and the state, with the governor and the mayor have put forward.
I
What
think
is the plan for
CHS is
doing it
having,
safely?
I think CHS is having some technical difficulty.
I see.
Unmuted.
Can you
Press
email
star
Bennett?
to mute your audio.
There we go. We
There
hear
we
you
go.
now. We're good.
Okay. Yeah, it's Patsy Yang. Stanley, thanks for that question, which you directed to CHS. I'm going to defer to DOC. It's actually the Public Health Department of the city. That's New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, DOHMH, who comes up with the guidance. And my understanding is that Commissioners Choksi and Brand have, I guess Choksi is coming up with the guidance for the department.
Thank you, Patsy. That's correct. I spoke with the doctor last week, explained our desire to reopen. And he knows our metrics. He knows our situation. He was not able to give me an opening date. We have a plan. We are ready to execute that plan as soon as we're given the go-ahead. Our InterGov folks are working collaboratively with DOHMH, I would say almost on a daily basis. And we are just waiting for the green light. And as soon as we have that, we will let you know.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Brand. What I'm just going to put out here, and I'll state it again, the Board of Correction, just hearing what has just been shared, the Board of Correction should send a letter to the commissioner, the commissioner of the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, to ask him what are the conditions under which the jails will be opened, just as the remainder of the city is being opened, and expressing our interest in seeing them opened as soon as possible, because we too want to return to things as normal, if you will, with respect to visitation, access to the law library, congregate services, and other. There may be exceptions, and we understand that and appreciate that, but we need to essentially ask for them to be put forward to us. So we should send a letter to the Board of Health, the Department of Health.
We are on it.
Are there other questions or comments? And I just want to, let me just reiterate here. This has to be done safely. So we want visitation to begin in person. We want, return to certain services. We want to do it safely, but under no circumstances should there be a holdback just because it's the New York City jails, just because.
I have a question for CHS. In the past 25 days, I think, since you've been releasing some data on vaccinations, you report that there have been 441 people who have received a first dose of that vaccine during that 25-day period, which is about 18 people a day. I understand that your program for vaccinations is to do one facility at a time. I'm sure that we all share a concern that vaccination is not a thing that you spread out over as much time as you can, but you do it as quickly as you can in order to cope with this pandemic. Are there any limitations in that have to do with staffing or your own staff, DOC staff, or anything else as to why you can't be vaccinating more people? I assume there's no vaccine shortage right now, but right now you're only vaccinating 17 new people a day. Can that be ramped up to be vaccinating people in every clinic so we can get to a better number more quickly? I appreciate what you've done, and you did it earlier than you were supposed to, and you've been in leadership in that. But I would hope that we join together to vaccinate a lot more people, a lot more quickly in the jails right now.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. It's Patsy for that. Thanks for that question. There is not infinite staffing resources on either CHS or DOC. We do have other obligations that we need to maintain. But, I think our approach has been and continues to be a pretty comprehensive one. We talk to patients at intake, at every clinical encounter, on the housing units, and at the points of vaccination where we do stand them up. So it's not on a one-off basis. We have days where our vaccinations are in the 72. We can hit a great day where people really are bought into it. That's really because we've been there before and we've talked to people. We go to the housing units to talk to people and go back and talk to people. We send our best teams there who have the greatest credibility with our patients. And it's really an issue of building trust and pulling down the levels of hesitancy by giving more information from our PAs and our nurses whom they know. So it's not just one facility a day. We've also been very, very flexible in terms of how we do this, whether it's a point of vaccination in a gym or whether we're sending roving teams of PAs who do the education, the nurses, and the pharmacists to actually do vaccinations right at the housing areas. It depends on the facility, as you can imagine. It depends on how easy it is to move people, how willing people are to be moved. And so we have adapted. We have facilities like AMKC. Obviously, we do both. We do both a point of vaccination and roving teams. But others, which you can imagine, like GRVC or NDC, we've changed course. We've tried. We keep trying both ways, and we really do think. I think I said this last month, which is we don't consider anybody refusing a vaccine to be a refusal. It's just a slower yes, and we're getting there. The numbers that Meg was great enough to report for us, those are all good. Keeping in mind that a lot of the people who we did vaccinate do get released. So the cumulative number of people who we've reached, isn't reflected in that percentage that we also post in terms of percent who are currently in custody who are immunized. We do immunize people who end up going outside. We do make arrangements in the community for them to get their second shot if they're a Pfizer patient. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I hope I did.
No, I think you did. I'll just ask one more. You mentioned GRVC. I've been very concerned about GRVC. The department has focused all of its most complex issues and a lot of its most complex management issues into GRVC with the movement of ESH there. Can you tell us anything about the relative access of people who are in restrictive housing to vaccines? Is it the same as people in general population? Have you looked at that? I've asked for that information. I'm very, very concerned about it.
Yes, I mean it's clear. I mean for GRVC, it's not like GRVC where we started as a point of vaccination. We very quickly, after the first drive that we went to roving teams to go to the housing areas, and we go everywhere. Yeah. There is no housing area that we skip or anything. That's not our goal. And it's not just once, it's repeated.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Are there other questions or comments? All right. If there are none, then we will move to the next topic of today's meeting. And the next topic is an update on the move to borough-based jails. Meg?
Yep, thank you. Yep. In spring of 2017, after years of community organizing, the mayor committed to closing Rikers and building new borough-based jails. In October of 2019, the City Council approved a plan to close Rikers Island by 2026 and build borough-based jails in Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn, and the Bronx. We believe the timeline has now been delayed to 2027, which MOCJ attributes to the pandemic. The city has recently received two favorable court rulings regarding the Manhattan and Queens sites, allowing for the process to continue. And so we have requested an update on the status of the borough-based jail plan and the upcoming timeline. So I will turn it over to the department for that update.
Great, thank you very much. And my name is Ashley I'm the executive director of the Borough-based jail system at DOC. And as you mentioned, Meg, we are currently on schedule to complete the Borough-based jail system by August 31st, 2027. And the delay from December 31st, 2026 was due to the COVID pandemic. We are committed to meeting this date. We have revised the public place ULURP application that will designate Rikers Island as a public place as of this date. And in addition, the City Council has passed legislation that will transfer the island from DOC to DCAS on this date as well. The current status, we are currently on track to register a contract at each of the 4 sites by the end of this year, and that will allow us to meet this overall timeline. Also, very importantly, we have resumed community engagement on this program, and we have conducted a number of workshops, both with local community members, with people directly impacted by the criminal justice system, and with DOC and CHS staff. All of this feedback is going to be incorporated into the RFPs that will be going out to teams who will ultimately design and construct the facilities. We are including all the plans for the facilities will meet the board's minimum standards. And we are, as they continue to be revised, they will reflect that. In addition, we will include it as an appendix to the RFPs that will be going out. We are planning on releasing the first facility RFPs this year, and we'll be able to provide a more updated timeline when we receive responses to an RFQ that went out next week. So shortly we will have a more concrete updated timeline.
Thank you. Are there questions, comments from any board member?
I just have a comment. I have asked for the last 3 meetings for someone from MOCJ to come and talk to us about the recarceration process, and this presentation really should be from MOCJ because they're the ones who are doing all of it. And I just hope that City Hall will reconsider letting the board at its public meeting have access to a representative from MOCJ to understand the city's policies on recarceration and the new borough jails.
I appreciate that comment, and I just want to make it clear that this has been a citywide effort to work on the borough-based jails that is led by MOCJ, the department, and Correctional Health Services. We are an integrated interagency team, and so we are very, involved in the leadership of that program.
I appreciate your comments. I wasn't criticizing that. I just think that they should be part of this subject, and I still think that. And they used to be. They used to meet with us regularly, but not now.
Thank you. Are there other comments?
Yeah, I would like to expand on Bobby's comment.
Please.
We haven't got any clarity regarding the new community borough jails and how young adults will be housed and served in those communities. So I think that's a priority for us to understand, based on what we have learned at Rikers, how they're going to be adapted to the new jails.
So we need to bring that into the another conversation if that's not yet available.
So I can provide a brief update about young adults in facilities. We are planning on housing young adults based on their borough residents, just as we are planning on housing the vast majority of the population, with the exception of women, who will be centralized in the Queens facility. The young adults will be housed in smaller housing units that will have a maximum count of 24 beds. There will also be increased programming space available directly on the housing units for young adults, but also just overall, for all of the housing units, there will be ample programming space available for all people in the new borough-based jails. Each housing unit, and this goes for both young adults and the entire population, will have direct access on the housing unit floor to program and multi-purpose rooms, interview rooms, video conferencing rooms, and a barber shop. We, in addition, are providing 3 DOE dedicated classrooms in each facility that will be easily accessible by all young adult housing units. In addition, we are planning for robust vocational education spaces that include generic spaces that can be cultivated based on what people in custody need. We also have specific automotive, personal grooming, driving simulation, and culinary arts program available for all people in custody. And in addition, of course, there will be a library and law library spaces available for everyone as well.
Thank you. Felipe, do you have any additional questions or comments?
No, I'm very glad to hear about the plans. It would be great to get further detail, particularly about space for outside programming entities to be part of the milieu. But we could do that at a different meeting.
I can just add one comment that a very important part of this is also that our outside program providers have dedicated administrative spaces within the facilities as well for them to be able to work within the facilities when they are not providing programming, and then they will have access to both the on-unit and centralized program spaces as well.
Great news. Thank you.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Just very briefly, I hope that as an extension of Felipe's concern that after the rule is passed in the next several weeks, that we have a discussion about the implications for restrictive housing in the borough-based jails.
Thank you.
Yes.
Our last agenda item is concerns the confidential phone call recording that has been raised by the Daily News and the concerns that the board members have. And I'm going to turn it over to Meg to set this agenda item up and then to hear from the department.
Great, thank you. As Jennifer said, we have asked the department to provide an update on the recording of confidential phone calls. In 2007, the board amended the minimum standards to allow the Department of Correction to, upon implementation of appropriate procedures and legally sufficient notice to people in custody, to listen to and monitor telephone calls, except for telephone calls to the Board of Correction, Inspector General, other monitoring and investigative bodies, treating physicians, clinicians, attorneys, and clergy. On March 20th of 2021, the Daily News reported that the department had illegally recorded over 1,500 calls between people in custody and their attorneys. The Daily News reported that the system run by the city contracted communications firms Securus Technologies mistakenly recorded 118 calls with 29 people in custody facing charges in the Bronx, and another 1,450 chats involving 353 people's cases in Brooklyn. A number of these phone calls were shared with the district attorney's offices and then shared with defense attorneys during discovery. The department has a do not record list that attorneys can request to be placed on. However, the department says that due to a clerical error at Securus, the new do not record list was not consistently applied. Securus told the Daily News that 150 numbers were impacted. I will now turn it over to the department for an update on this.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Lisa Richardson and I am the Deputy General Counsel here at DOC. The department is committed to enabling individuals in our custody to consult privately with their attorneys. And we have been working diligently with Securus to address this issue since it was first brought to our attention in late December of 2020. In December, when we heard of a potential problem directly from the Bronx defenders, we contacted Securus and directed them to investigate the situation. They reviewed their records and determined that 4 Bronx defender telephone numbers had not been placed on an agency-wide do not record list, which would have provided the appropriate protection for the phone calls. Rather, the numbers had erroneously been placed on a site-specific do not record list, which only covered one specific facility, not the facility where the individuals in custody were calling from. As has been reported, we then directed Securus to conduct an audit for all public defender organizations and their respective do not record lists, and to sequester any incorrectly recorded telephone calls. And to date, we have shared the results of those audits directly with all of the major public defender organizations in the city, as well as all district attorney's offices, the Department of Investigation, the NYPD. And we are engaged in ongoing discussions with all impacted organizations. Just to provide an update on some corrective actions that we collectively have taken with Securus. We worked with Securus to implement a quality assurance process on both their end and on our end internally at the department. We also requested that Securus modify the pre-recorded admonishment, which plays on beginning of every non-private telephone call. It warns both the caller and the recipient of the call that the call is being recorded and is subject to monitoring. And we directed Securus to add an explicit warning to attorneys that if they are hearing the admonishment, the call is not private, it is being recorded. They should not have confidential communication on that phone call. They should hang up and they should contact the department to ensure that their phone number is registered and placed on the do not record list. We have also directed Securus to develop a database where attorneys can check whether or not their telephone number is one of the approximately, now we're up to about 350,000 telephone numbers that are currently set to do not record status. They can log on to that database and check whether or not their phone number is privatized. And we have included a link to that database on the department's public-facing website. So we recognize the serious concerns that are raised whenever privileged communications are disclosed, which is why we have and will continue to work diligently to address any ongoing concerns by the defender organizations.
Thank you. Any board comments, feedback?
I may have misremembered, but I thought at the council hearing on several months ago when the department was questioned by Councilman Powers at great length about this issue, that you had known about problems with this system, recordings of attorney calls getting to other lawyers in March of 2020.
No, that's not exactly correct. What happened earlier in 2020 in the beginning of the pandemic was that the department had received a number of new telephone lists from defender organizations, in particular from legal aid, as attorneys switched to working from home, working remotely. They were registering their cell phone numbers and other telephone numbers. In May of 2020, legal aid notified us that they had received a copy of a privileged telephone call through the pre-trial disclosure process. And when we investigated that issue at the time, it was determined that that phone number had not been provided to the department to be placed on the do not record list, which is why that telephone call had been recorded and then disclosed through the pre-trial disclosure process. That is a very different issue than the issue that currently exists, where due to a processing error, the telephone numbers in question now were not properly privatized despite notice and request to place them on do not record status.
Okay, thank you. Does ID have access independent of any of a court order to listen in on calls? The department's investigative division?
Yes, they do. There are authorized users within the investigations division, and any access that they had to telephone calls that were inadvertently recorded has been included in the audit by Securus. So we have identified those access events to the extent that they existed.
But they can call, they can listen to any call they want to, other than one to a attorney.
they cannot listen to calls between individuals in custody and their attorneys or any other phone numbers that have been properly privatized. They can only listen to non-private telephone calls.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you. We will now move into public hearing, our second public hearing comment period. I have a list of speakers who signed up to speak. I'm going to call every person's name. When you hear your name, please raise your hand using the icon below the participants list on your WebEx screen. If you don't see the participants list, click on the silhouette of a person on the menu at the bottom of your screen. Once you open the participants list, you should see the hand icon in order to raise your hand. When you raise your hand, we will unmute you and you will be able to turn on your video. You can then begin your public comment. I will tell you when it has been 3 minutes and we will move to the next speaker. We also welcome written comments. You can email your written comments to boc@boc.nyc.gov or mail it to our new location, 2 Lafayette, 12th floor, room 1221, New York, New York, 1007. Again, 2 Lafayette, 12th floor, room 1221, New York, New York, 10007. I will now call our first speaker, Assemblymember Jessica Gonzalez Rojas. Assemblywoman, are you with us?
I don't think the assembly member has joined us yet. I'll let you know if she joins.
Okay. We will go to Ashaki Antono. I see you, Ashaki.
Good morning, Mr. Richards. You're messing up my last name, Mr. Richards.
My apologies.
It's Antoine, Asaki Antoine. But good morning again, everyone. At this juncture, it's very, very hard for correctional officers to do their daily assigned duties within the facilities. Correctional officers are still working 24-hour shifts. 2 weeks ago, several correctional officers worked 27 to 30-hour shifts with no meal break. There are some relief. I would say that the department has redeployed correctional officers from different areas to assist with relieving officers that's on triple tours. However, they are now working 24 to 30 hours. They're doing triple tours. This plan is counterproductive and cannot sustain itself within the upcoming months. Just this past weekend on Mother's Day, several officers assigned to AMKC, EMTC, RNC worked 24 hours. That's on Mother's Day. Why is this acceptable? How is this legal? Correctional officers are employed by the City of New York and should be protected by the City of New York. We patrol the toughest precincts in New York, and at this juncture, the city council members, elected officials have ignored and failed to effectively address this issue. Gang-related assaults, slashings has drastically increased. These inmates that are engaged in vicious acts of violence are on the medical exclusion list. Inmates have used to their advantage being placed on the medical exclusion list as an opportunity to continue to assault and blatantly disregard inmate rules, resulting in no accountability. Low staffing levels, lack of protein, horrible response times, inoperable cells, lack of sanitation in the facilities, reduced facility searches, delayed inmate services, lack of accountability for violated inmate rules are so many more aggravating factors that prohibit the jails from running effectively cannot continue to happen. Without some sort of structure in the facilities, this type of chaos will continue. I don't understand, Stanley, Mr. Richards, why it is acceptable to hear time and time again officers working 24-hour shifts, inmates manipulating cells, inmates brandishing weapons, and everyone seems to think that this is okay. The safety and security of the jails are compromised. Why is this okay? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Benny Basio.
I don't believe he's in the room right now.
Our next speaker is Sarita Dafferty. Is Sarita with us?
She was with us, but seems to have left the room. So I'll let you know when she returns.
Okay, thank you, Bennett. Our next speaker is Andre Ward. I see your hand. Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, your voice is distorted. It still sounds very distorted.
You might try turning off your video. It looks like it's trying to connect on the video, but I'll email you a call-in number too, and you could try that.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Kayla Simpson.
Hello again. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, Kayla.
Oh, wonderful. Hello again. We were very glad to see the staffing problems on this board's agenda. As Dr. Cohen described, failure to properly staff the facilities has a cost beyond just security. The reports from people in custody that we're getting, and that I'm sure the board staff are getting too, have reached a fever pitch over the past several weeks. And the board knows all too well that people in custody depend on DOC staff for every basic need that they have. And so staffing disruptions are serious. And we're hearing increased reports that there aren't enough officers to take people to their clinic appointments, or to the pharmacy for their medication, or to video conference with attorneys or family, or for rec. People are telling us about regularly missing medication doses, missing meals, getting food late or cold, missing recreation, missing mail, missing commissary access, and the list goes on, of course. And Officer Antoine is right. It's not okay. No one, CO or otherwise, should be working triple shifts. That isn't okay. The out sick rate is serious, and it needs serious attention. But the point is this: it would be an even more serious mistake for the city to proceed as if there were a looming specter of staff scarcity, because we know that a staff shortage is not what's happening. We know that because the Nunez monitor and his team, who represent decades of experience across jurisdictions all over this country, have described again and again that this department has a high number of staff as compared to other jurisdictions. And we urge the board, in the strongest possible terms, to look critically at the explanation that the staffing problem is due to the out sick rate or because of 2 facilities remaining open, and to determine whether the facts and numbers support that suggested rationale. Because what you're seeing is an overstaffed agency that's operating like an understaffed agency. The department doesn't need more line staff. It needs leadership and accountability, not just at the top, but deep into the leadership at each facility. It needs to answer some questions about how and why DOC is creating these staffing issues with this large number of uniformed staff on the taxpayer payroll. How many staff are assigned to posts where they can't have contact with people in custody because they're under investigation for brutality or other violations of use of force policy? How many times are staff pulled off of important staffing assignments because of unnecessary alarms in the facility or because the department defaults to force to solve problems, which causes more disruption? We see over and over again how force and violence beget more force and violence. And the large number of staff out sick or unavailable certainly compounds the staff management problem at DOC, but it's not new. These problems are cultural and they run deep. And honestly, the low vaccination rates of staff are appalling. And these efforts to encourage staff are not sufficiently creative or urgent, and an entire system is crumbling. So we think more attention needs to be on that. And finally, one note on the restrictive housing rulemaking. These issues of staffing mismanagement should also make us think long and hard about the rulemaking, what kinds of units the board will allow to exist in the city jails, especially when an isolated unit relies even more heavily on the presence and capacity of a staff member. And we hope that the serious deficiencies in the rule are being corrected in the process, and that the certification process is not a process to eviscerate reform efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kayla. Our next speaker is Darren Mack.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Darren.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good morning, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Richards, and all members of the board. My name is Darren Mack. I'm with Freedom Agenda, and I'm a member of the Jail Action Coalition, and I'm also a survivor of Rikers Island. I just want to encourage the board and echo what was stated previously around the board really looking into this this notion that there's a staff shortage problem within the DOC. And I also would like to reiterate that there is, the Nunes report clearly stated that New York City citywide jail system has 8 times the national average staffing than anywhere in the country, and it's the highest jail staff in the country. But I have more questions than anything. Like, for instance, during an average shift, how many uniformed staff are working? That's a simple question. If we can get like some type of numbers of how many uniformed staff are working on each shift, then that could lead us to answering some other questions. Like, this within the last year since the pandemic and the closure of a lot of businesses and institutions, public records indicated that over 344 staff, 87 civilian, like 257 uniform, worked in the transportation division. How was their time being used during COVID when most in-person court visits were suspended? That's something that I think, the board should look into as well. And I'm like hearing different numbers and on different forums and platforms about the numbers of uniformed staff and ununiformed staff. And I recall Commissioner Brand stated in the January Board of Correction meeting that the department had 8,950 uniformed staff, though only 7,200 uniformed staff positions were budgeted for the year. What is the reason for so many staff in excess, and how is the department addressing it? Excess of the budgeted positions, and how is the department addressing it? So these are just some some questions that I hope encourage the board to look into, and as echoed by the last public statement, I think that there really needs to be some really intense and critical questions around those issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Scott Polchowitz.
Great. See you then. Okay.
Scott? Bennett, is Scott's audio on?
Yeah, he should be able to unmute. I'll try unmuting and see if that's an issue. Scott, I've just unmuted you. Are you there? I'll contact Scott and try to figure out the tech issue.
Okay. Our next speaker is Shakina McIntosh.
It looks like that person's no longer with us.
Okay. Let's go to Francis Giteles. Okay.
Okay, wait a minute.
You're now unmuted.
You're now unmuted. Yep, you're good, Francis. You're good, Francis.
Okay, I also tried to get the picture on, but I don't know how to do that. Okay.
Your video's on. Your video's on.
Oh, okay. I don't see it, but I'll take your word for it. Okay, I guess my primary concern, I had also said I signed up to testify earlier about the variance, but I guess I'll let that go for now. Right now, my primary concern is what you're all going to do about solitary confinement. It seems to me in our discussion that oh, never mind. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble talking. I'll just cancel. I'd like to give my time over if she would like to Ms. V.
Ms. V is not signed up to speak on this.
Oh, okay. Well, does she want to take my time?
I'm not sure if she's on.
Never mind. Then I'll just cancel.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you, Francis.
I'm sorry.
The next speaker is Victor. I'm not sure if this is last name, but Victor Gap Solution.
That person's no longer on, and I think I made a mistake. And Ms. V, give me 1 second. I think Ms. V is scheduled to speak here. Yeah, Ms. V did sign up to speak. That's my mistake.
Okay, so is she on? She's ready.
Yeah.
Yes, I see her hand.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. V.
Thank you so much, friend. So early, okay, so I have something I want to play, and then I'll speak. Well, I'll wait my turn until you call me to speak.
You can go now, Ms. V.
What do you mean by that?
Ms. V, we can't hear anything he's saying.
Okay, so you know what? He did ask me to submit it to the media, so I'll go ahead and do that as well. But I just want to say what I was going to say earlier, is stop doing with these variants with separation status. It's extremely important. Can y'all hear me? Because I know y'all always like to leave yourselves on mute, which is very hard for people to hear yourselves and ourselves when we actually speak. DOC actually mentioned today something that I think is very important, and I feel like the chair, I wish she was still here. I feel like she failed the people of New York City by stopping Dr. Safer for questioning DOC around the drug issue, because I wanted to actually state, DOC stated in their letter to this board that DOC is committed to eliminating illicit contraband items, weapons, drugs, and other dangerous objects from our jails. Yet no visitors have been there in over a year. And yet I know for a fact that K2 is running rampant throughout certain facilities, and you can't smuggle that in by melting it down through the mail. So that was a complete wash of an excuse that they gave this board today. And I really wish this board listen to public first, so that you can hold DOC accountable when you question them, instead of allowing them to leave and not asking them real things in real time when you don't know what with the information given to you in public comment at the next meeting. DOC mentioned in their letter that 121 slashing and stabbings have occurred by someone in custody against someone else in custody. Yet I myself on the record have explained and testified how officers gang affiliated have put my own safety at risk, and it was 2 incarcerated individuals who stood before me against the wall to protect me. You have to start holding DOC accountable when they 2-step around around officers doing illegal activity. You can no longer ignore that fact. As a brain surgery survivor, my surgeon told me not to go through the airport scanning machines. Once again, you're still allowing DOC staff to do this. I don't care if it was just a 2% insufficient amount trained. 2% is 2% too much. And these are real lives on the line, waiting their fair day in court. They have not been charged, yet they're being subjected to things that can impact them after they leave the DOC system. Just like COVID. You praise Commissioner Brand, but yet you know clearly not enough people had PPE or cleaning supplies, and she told you she couldn't be responsible to make sure that 50% capacity were in units, that we outside are forced to miss family, to stay 6 feet apart from each other. Make it make sense. Are the incarcerated not your priority as board members? And I just also want to say, it's time that we stop sugarcoating this. And I'm very happy Commissioner Brand gave her resignation the day the 11th Federal Monitors Report is supposed to come out. And I encourage you all to actually read every page of this 11th report, because it's clear that you haven't read every page of the last 10 that came out by the way continue to vote with these variances and not hold DOC accountable. It's very clear that you are failing at your own position by not doing up. If it's like, I'm on vacation today, but I showed up because this matters to me. Do your job, read the right reports, hold DOC accountable. And I will say, like I said at the last meeting in April, it's sad to me that 2 melanin folks lead this BOC, and we still have variances and rules with shackling and indefinite no access to legal representation, modern day slavery at its finest, and one of the biggest jail systems in the country.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. We have Sharada back with us. Sarita?
Good morning. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good morning.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I was not available when my name was called earlier. I think all of the advocates have already made incredibly important points, and so I just have a few to reinforce. One is around the issue of contraband or drugs or weapons in the jails. I want to remind the board that in both 2014 and 2018, the Department of Investigation had 2 investigators pose as correction officers and found that they were seamlessly able to enter the jails with contraband, drugs, and weapons. And so the board needs to be asking the department what they are doing to ensure that their officers are not bringing contraband into the jails. And I think that that was what Bobby was getting at with his questioning. And I agree with Ms. B's point that that needed to go further. And if it wasn't done today, it needs to happen in the future. Secondly, the commissioner has resigned. She has overseen a terrible, terrible period of human rights violations. And now that there is going to be a new commissioner, I strongly hope that the board will weigh in on what is needed from that next commissioner. 7 more months under this mayor could be catastrophic. The last 6 months have included 6 deaths of people in custody. it really matters what happens in the next 7 months. And I believe that the board understands that, and we need your action around that. And lastly, I just want to emphasize that the questions around staffing are incredibly important and do need to be covered more deeply in another meeting. The board, I'm sorry, not the board, but the department must answer on the record how they are unable to manage the jails in any measure of effectiveness when they have twice the number of staff that they had when the mayor took office, twice the number of officers per person in custody that they had when the mayor took office. The ratio is now 1.6 officers to a person in custody. It used to be less than 0.8. If they are not managing the jails effectively now, it is failed leadership and it is a lack of will. It is not a lack of staff. And it would be a complete disservice to the not just the people in the jails, but the entire city for the board to in any way endorse the idea that the mayor should double down on this failed agency by adding in more officers with more capacity to abuse people. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have been joined by Assemblymember Jessica Gonzalez Rojas. Assemblymember. Okay. Bennett, is the audio?
Assemblymember, I'm going to unmute you so that you can speak. Should now be able to join us.
Great. Can you see me as well or no?
There's a button on the bottom of your screen that should say start video that you have to press.
Okay. Great.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to the chair and to the board members for the opportunity to testify today. As was mentioned, my name is Jessica Gonzalez Rojas. I use she, her, ella pronouns, and I'm the assembly member of the 34th Assembly District, which encompasses the neighborhoods of Corona, East Elmhurst, Jackson Heights, and Woodside. I recently made an unannounced visit to Rikers Island this past Friday, along with my colleague, Assemblymember Fernandez. We were there for 5 hours and were actually guided by a corrections officer who showed actually real humanity for the folks who were incarcerated. And while I was there, I saw the NYC structurally restrictive housing units that are meant to be alternatives to solitary confinement under the board's proposed rules. But I want to be direct. It's still solitary. Being locked in these cages is nothing more than solitary confinement by another name. I witnessed the out of cell time, which was moved from one cage to another cage to an outdoor cage. That doesn't feel like pure recreation as is needed by these human beings. This board promised to end solitary confinement, and you all must fulfill that promise by truly ending solitary confinement in all its forms. As we know, solitary confinement took the life of Leilin Palanco and Khalif Browder and so many other people. Research has found that spending time in solitary confinement causes psychosis, heart disease, self-mutilation, and death. Solitary confinement is inflicted on predominantly on Black and Brown and Latinx people, and it does nothing for safety, and in fact make jails and outside communities less safe as people deteriorate. It does also have a negative impact and increasing recidivism because people are unable to reintegrate into the most healthy and optimal manner. So if New York City is going to fully end solitary, people in city jails should have access to at least 14 hours out of cell per day, with access to at least 7 hours of out of cell congregate programming in spaces with several other people that are conducive for people to engage in regular and meaningful human engagement. At the state level, we passed the Halt Solitary Confinement Act to reduce solitary confinement. New York City must now lead to fully get rid of it. I urge the board to finally and fully end solitary confinement now. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Our next speaker will be, we heard Scott Palteridge is still with us.
Pat, I think you're still on mute.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Great. Sorry about that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Assembly Member, for that testimony. Thank you to the board members. I want to take the time today to share additional information about how the proposed rules, at least the last ones that were made public, would not comply with the recently enacted Halt Solitary Confinement Act that the Assembly Member referenced. Of course, the mayor and this board promised to do more than halt to fully end solitary confinement, and indeed you must do so, but just want to flag how the proposed rule would not even comply with this binding state law, let alone go further to end solitary as promised. I'm just going to mention a few things. First, even one day in what's RMAS level 1 and RMAS level 2 would violate HALT. HALT defines segregated confinement as, quote, any form of cell confinement for more than 17 hours a day, unquote. There is no other way to understand being locked alone in a cell in RMAS level 1 or RMAS level 2 as anything other than, quote, unquote, a form of cell confinement under HALT. HALT prohibits anyone from being in such confinement beyond 15 consecutive days. It also requires that even during those 15 days, people have at least 4 hours of out-of-cell programming per day, which again is not required under the current rules, and which is why even one day in RMAS level 1 or 2 would violate HALT. And, you know, even if people did have the 4 hours, it would mean a maximum total of 15 consecutive days across those two levels. The second thing to mention is that HALT prohibits certain categories of people from spending even one day in solitary, including young people and elderly people and people with mental health needs, any mental health need, people with physical disabilities and developmental disabilities. And again, none of those units, RMAS level 1 or 2, would allow for any of those categories of people to spend even one day in them. Third, I'll mention that HALT permits people to have access to representation for any hearings that can result in being in segregated confinement or alternative units. And so that would require the department to ensure that people have the permission to have representation before going to any of the RMAS levels, regardless of their conditions. And then fourth, to mention is that HALT requires that people in any alternative units to generally have access to at least 7 hours of out-of-cell congregate programming and activities comparable to the general population, meaning the time has to be out of cell, it has to be programming and activities that are congregate with other people and in a manner that's comparable to the general population. None of the RMAS levels under the proposed rules would comply with those requirements. So again, I urge the board to ensure, first of all, that at the very least, at the very minimum, that whatever proposed rule is ultimately published in the next few weeks, as was mentioned, complies with HALT's requirements, and also, of course, for the board to go further than what's required in HALT to fully and truly end solitary confinement in all its forms. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Scott. Our final speaker is Andre Ward, still with us?
Andre said that they had to leave.
Okay. So that concludes our public comment. The board's next public meeting is scheduled for June 8th, 2021 at 9 a.m. This meeting will be held via WebEx. Details will be available on our website, and we will send an email to interested parties. Thank you to everyone for participating. Your voice matters. Thank you to the Department of Correction and to CHS. And I personally just want to say thank you to the Commissioner, and I wish you well. I wish you well. Thank you for your service, and everybody have a great day. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Stanley. Thanks all.